Hey guys, can you hear me? I'm just trying to go live on Facebook also. Just give me 1 second. Okay, perfect. I think we're live on Facebook also. How's everybody doing today? Chill. Hey Ron. Hey William. How are you guys doing? We're waiting for a few more people to join, and Larry is also going to join in a few minutes. Hey David, how you doing? All right, Larry's here. Let me promote him. Larry?
Sharad.
How are you?
How are you, man?
I'm doing good, man.
Are you not no video?
No video. I don't see your video.
Yeah, it says, let's see, it says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Oh, really? Let me see. Oh. All right, there we go.
Now you can see my ugly face.
Man, you're a good-looking guy, so you should be trying to get on camera. I should be the one, like, yeah.
Please, man.
Yeah. How you doing? Are you guys? You guys are not hit as bad in Phoenix, Arizona, right?
Not as bad, but I think we're just at the beginning stages of stuff. They've actually, we're actually got a stay in place order by the governor, so like nobody can go anywhere right now.
But you, I assume, are part of an essential service?
I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just talked to an attorney in South Carolina, and she said they just received a mandatory stay at home, but it's still unclear like what's essential, what's not. So real estate, any real estate related stuff is essential. Like I was talking to someone in Indiana, and they said even liquor stores are essential. So
they're essential?
Yeah, because, and she said the reason for that is, it's actually my acquisition person, Larita, and she said the reason for that is because if they close down the liquor stores, if they stop the sales of liquor, some people could have withdrawal symptoms, and then it could lead to some other issues, So I guess like then Starbucks should also be open, like, people. people want their
Liquor
coffee.
stores are even more essential for me right now. I need it.
I know. So, I mean, I went to my Walmart yesterday and, on Costco, they're still selling liquor. So, I mean, yeah, I guess you can go buy liquor, but.
I'm buying as much liquor as I can find, brother.
Right.
I need it right now.
Getting ready for a long, long lockdown.
I don't know. One thing I will say is I'm definitely spending less money. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, because you're not going out, you're not eating out. I mean,
nope.
I was reading somewhere. I mean, the unemployment report came out today, 6.6 million claims in 1 week. That's until like the last 2 weeks, 10 million people have filed for unemployment. That's amazing. And I think that number is only going to go up. And that doesn't include any independent contractors. So, actual people out of job is much, much higher.
Well, I think I'm going to do the paycheck protection program myself.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk to you about. So we have few people who are joined in. So why don't we get started, and we're doing a live on Facebook also. So if you just want to give us a little bit background about yourself, and then I have some questions that I want to ask, and then we'll go into the questions that people have.
Do I get to see everyone's pretty face here?
No, it's just you and I. So when somebody has a question, then we'll bring them on, and then we'll see them on video.
Okay, I'm a CPA by trade. I've been a CPA in Massachusetts and Arizona for over 30 years now. I've worked for large Fortune 1000 companies as their CFO, both in public and private practice as well. And I've had my own company where I made flame-resistant clothing for oil and gas and public utilities. I was the CEO of that company from 2011 to 2015, and ultimately sold it to a strategic buyer. So we did pretty well, and I was able to engineer that buy and sell of the company. That was in Latin America. So I have international experience as well, and I've worked with startups all the way up to $500 million companies. And now I've been consulting basically as a fractional CFO for the last 5 years now. And so what I do is I help companies on a more limited basis have the expertise that they would need from someone like me who's got that experience, but on a much lower price tag than they would have to do, than they would have to bring on as a full-time employee. So I typically have 15 to 20 clients at a time. It's worked really well for my clients, and I actually have a controller level person that works for me, so we can be your accounting department, or I can just provide you strategic guidance as we go along. And what I'm finding right now is what's most important now is people kind of need us more than ever. In terms of planning and making sure that they're looking at their cash flow and as closely as possible to get through this difficult time.
Right. No, I appreciate that. Yeah. And then Larry and I know each other from the Multiplier Mastermind. So we've known each other for a couple of years now. And Larry is an amazing, amazing person, human being. And we've had some really, really good heart-to-heart conversations. So I appreciate you, being an awesome friend. So the first question I want to ask is about the SBA loan availability. There's a lot of talk about it. Like I was talking to a friend of mine who's an investor, but he works for one of the largest modeling agencies in LA. So you're saying he's applying for his company, send me the link. So who is it available for? Who can apply for it? How much they should apply for? Is it for real estate investors, agents, independent contractors? So if you have some information on that, that would be great. And guys, if you have any questions, feel free to chat, put it in the chat box so we can ask them, ask the questions, relevant questions as we're going through these topics.
Sure. There's two different types of programs now that have come out, and I've heard there's a third one that Congress is looking at as well. And this is obviously all U.S. based, but the SBA, along with the FFMA Act that I believe was passed about a week and a half ago, provides for an SBA loan that's disaster recovery. And you can go online to the the SBA and I believe the Department of Treasury, the IRS, and get that application filled out. And that specifically is for small businesses, where through the SBA, where you can actually borrow up to $2 million at approximately 3.5 to 3.75%. And that is a loan, and it's a recourse loan, meaning that it has to be personally guaranteed. But the amortization period is very favorable. It's a 30-year amortization, and can really help get people through that. Now, recently with the CARES Act that was passed by Congress a week ago Friday, it's actually last Friday, you've got some items called, the big item in there is really the Payroll Protection Program,
right,
which is called the PPP, and that's a really, really good program, where I believe that can be up to $10 million in terms of borrowing. But what's really attractive about that program is this is specific to what's really cool about it. It could actually be a government grant almost, where you don't have to pay the money back, provided you don't reduce your payroll by up to 25% over the next 8 weeks. So the way the program works is you can borrow up to 2.5 times your monthly payroll, inclusive of 1099 contractors. And you can borrow that, and provided that you don't reduce your workforce on a dollars basis by 25%, that number can actually be forgiven.
okay,
And you wouldn't have to pay it back. So it's non-recourse and really, really helpful. And what the design of it was to keep people away from the unemployment line, so that people maintain their employment and they can get paid while businesses are struggling. And that's a pretty easy program to get to. And from what I heard is that the Department of Treasury is going to fund that real quickly if you can do that. And there's two ways that you can do that. There's a Department of Treasury website with the application online, but if you actually, a lot of like your local banks or national banks are being approved as PPP type recipients under the program. So you can actually apply directly through your bank. The bank will help you with a preparation of the application. And then what they'll do is they'll submit it on your behalf. So for example, if you're with Bank of America or Chase or US Bank or one of those larger banks, you contact your business banker, tell them that you want to sign up for the program. They'll provide you a list of items that they're going to need, and they'll submit the application on your behalf. And then once it's approved, the money will just come directly into your bank account from the government.
interesting. And do we know at this point what's the turnaround for it? Like, and how long does the application take? What's the turnaround? What
The application's actually, it's a really, really quick application. Primarily what you're going to need is your 940 and 941 payroll reports.
Okay.
As well as, I believe, if you have a 1096, meaning who do you pay on a contractor basis, all of that will be taken into consideration. So all of your 1099 related employees as well, I believe you can put in there. And then the bank would then fill out the application on your behalf, I believe, and then they'll send it in to the government, and they can help you monitor the approval, and then the money would just come back, whatever's approved, directly into your bank account.
Interesting. And how much of that is non-recourse? I heard from somebody that up to $10,000 is non-recourse, as long as 90% of that is used towards payroll and other, like paying your rent, and you like to keep your business operating. Is that true?
The landscape is changing. So what I heard the whole thing was non-recourse, but you could be more correct than I am. When it originally came out, the whole thing was intended to be non-recourse, and provided you kept your employees on and didn't
For 8 weeks.
furlough them or what?
For 8 weeks.
For 8 weeks, correct. Then it becomes completely non-recourse, and it's forgiven. The loan would be forgiven, and it's almost considered like a government grant at that point.
Got it. And I was looking at the application, and I think the effect on your business is retroactive to like mid of February. Is that right? Instead of like March, I think it goes back like how your business started getting affected back in February.
Correct. They look at 2019 reporting.
Right.
But you've had to been in business essentially as of February 15th, 2020 is, I
Right.
think, the drop dead date.
Right. Yeah, and then it's like so much is changing right now. It's kind of hard to stay on top of it. And you mentioned that there might be another program that they're coming out with. Like just look at some of the numbers, like astronomical, like 2.2 trillion. It's amazing how big these numbers are.
Yep. So it seems to be changing by the day, and apparently the application for the payroll protection program, actually, my understanding is tomorrow they will actually have the application through the banking system,
Right.
meaning your local bank. So that hasn't even been finalized yet, but
Right.
this is what the tea leaves are saying in terms of what I've heard that's
Right.
going on out in the marketplace.
And can that all be done online, like uploading your
Yep.
documents and everything? So like your
Yep.
payroll
It can all
documents.
be done online. Again, what I would suggest is so that you don't have to do it yourself. If you've got a banking relationship, I would contact your banking representative, because most businesses have their own banking representative that they kind of go to, especially if you're with a larger bank. You may even have
Right.
them with some of the community banks and regional banks, but they can really help you prepare, and they can actually do the application for you, provided you get them what they need.
Would you have to go in person to the bank, or you can just like
All online. They can
online?
just, what, you don't have to go into the bank at all.
Wow, interesting. And then we don't know at this point what the turnaround is. I understand like the application is gonna government is gonna start accepting the application tomorrow, and then
Correct.
however
Correct.
long it goes
Beginning,
from
I
there.
believe the date is tomorrow is
Okay,
when they'll be able to start doing that.
got it. And then the money that's supposed to be coming in for every individual making, I believe, less than $75,000. It's like $1,200 per individual, and then $1,200. If you husband and wife, 1,200 each person plus $500 each child. Do you know when that is going to start hitting? I believe the checks are going out, or the direct deposit should be sometime this month.
Correct. It should be this month. Again, they haven't been specific because I don't think that they know yet, but that's what I'm hearing as well. They should start going out this month for that
Right.
stuff as well.
Interesting. Um, and then, okay, so anybody, if any of you guys have any questions on the SBA loans, please put it in the chat. If you want to come on and talk to Larry, definitely let me know. And Larry, I know like last week when we did another call in a mastermind, you were talking about like applying for these SBA loan. You want to make sure like something as simple, you're not applying it at the middle of the day, because there's a huge lag on the website. So the best time to apply for that is, either very early in the morning or very late at night. Have you seen, has that changed the process with that? Have they?
No,
No.
it's even more people are getting on those sites. So those sites during the day are crashing. It
Right.
seems like all the time. So getting on really early in the morning or late at night when there's less activity, you've got a better chance of getting your information through and getting your information uploaded that you would need online,
Right.
as opposed to during the day when everyone is kind of fighting for space and then the system can't handle all of the volume.
Right. And then what about, I know like a lot of real estate investors that work for themselves, like they don't have, like a paycheck coming in. Does this also apply like the payment protection program? Like if you're an independent contractor, can you apply for it also? And then
Yes,
like
you
gets
can.
like real estate agent, for example.
Independent contractors, small business owners, sole proprietors, they're all, you can definitely apply for it. One of the things that it's not applicable to is that has to be your primary trade or business. But if you're a passive investor and you're getting just checks in as a passive non-operating party to an entity, then you're ineligible for the program.
What about if you own rental properties? Like I have a separate LLC that I have all my rental properties in, and then, we haven't seen the numbers come in for rent collection yet, but I assume it's going to go down a little bit. So what happens in those cases if, like if you're relying on rental income as your primary income?
If you're relying on it, you're participating in the management of that entity, and it is an operating business, and you have your own EIN, then I believe that would apply. But again, it's the definitions they're not as robust as they probably need to be.
Right.
But I would say is that if you can say that this is a like your software company is a primary trader business where you're involved in, if
Right.
you're just getting rental income on the side, you'd have to make a case that it's a primary trader business and that you're involved more than 50% of the time,
Right.
in terms of participation.
But does it, I mean, I guess it doesn't hurt to apply. I mean, the worst that can happen is like they can
Absolutely
reject it,
not.
right?
Absolutely not. I would apply and get as much as you could across the board. How much,
Yes.
whatever you could get. I'm actually going to do it myself.
Right.
Um, you know,
Yeah, especially.
my consulting practice is a primary trader business, but I also had to hard money lending myself. That wouldn't be applicable.
Right.
Because that would be considered passive income.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, that's what, and then from what I understand, the payment protection program application doesn't take too long. It's like 10-15 minutes if you,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
it's very quick and efficient.
right,
And again, like I said, is you could do it yourself, or you may want to go through your bank,
right,
because you know the essentially the government is going to get a block of applications from like Chase or B of A or stuff like
right,
that, and they'll be able to apply more pressure
right.
than you would individually to get that stuff approved as quickly as possible.
Interesting. No, that's a good point. Yeah, I'll apply through my bank. Right. So, just like moving on, what are you noticing some best practice on like managing cash flow in these times? Like, what are you seeing? I know you work as a CFO for many large real estate investors. So, what are you seeing in terms of like what are some things other investors are doing to manage their cash flow?
Yeah. So what I've been doing is I've been working with a lot of my client base to actually prepare longer term cash flow models. So not just the P&L, but also their balance sheets, and
Okay.
trying to figure out, we'll go through from a revenue perspective, what is the worst case scenario and what types of expenses can I cut
Right.
to make sure that I'm managing my cash flow every month and just kind of managing accordingly. So what I've done is most of my clients actually work off of QuickBooks.
Right.
That's what I kind of see. And so once they do that, we actually prepare. The most of the folks that I'm working with, they have their financials through February. I've gotten a forecast through March, for example. We take this all down to cash. So from your P&L net income all the way to cash flow. And then what we do is we go through the revenue part and figure out, on a worst case scenario, this is our expectation. And mostly people are expecting things to approve, you know, August, September, October. But in the
Right.
interim, what does the cash flow look like? And we take a look at all of our expenses on a line by line basis and
Right.
seeing what we really need to do in terms of the interim, and also figuring out, calling vendors, doing things like that with vendors, and just saying to them, just being upfront with them, look, I can't pay you everything that I owe you at this point, but
Right.
I can pay you a portion. I mean, we've all got to kind of watch out for one another, which I think is important.
Right.
Um, so, pay them a portion, just let them know what you can pay them.
Right.
And, once things improve, then you get people paid back at that point.
What are some of the big expenses that you're seeing, some investors cut back on, like marketing? I would think like some people
Yeah,
are cutting back on
well,
marketing.
it depends what type of business you're in. If you're in the real estate game,
Right.
it's mostly marketing and payroll is
Right.
what you're looking at. But
Right.
again, a lot of people have cut payroll, and it could hurt them because they may not be able to get those loans from the government if they've cut
For the
payroll too early, they may not be eligible to get those loans from the government because they've cut their payroll too much, you know?
but
So
but then how
go
does
ahead.
it work? Like, what if you keep somebody for like extra month, and thinking that this loan is going to come through? What if you don't get approved? Then what happens in that case? That
Yeah,
is
well,
it?
if you don't get approved, then you let them go. You have no other choice. Now
Okay.
it's kind of survival, but
Right.
provided that, you can, hopefully the government's going to respond within 15 to 30 days on whether you get this payroll protection,
Right.
stipend in. And then
Right.
at that point, you can kind of make a decision. But I wouldn't, I wouldn't, I would try to keep as much payroll on just so that you can actually get the,
Right.
you know, get the get the benefit of it from the government. But if they don't approve it or don't approve all of the monies that you've requested, then
Right.
you do what you have to do. But it becomes even more important now to manage your cash flow so
Right.
closely.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, no, I did that this week. I like pulled my report and sorted all my expenses from largest to smallest, and then just went line by line and all my businesses to see if there's anything we can cut back on. Like just kind of looking at like did we really need to spend it? So it was a good exercise, just kind of going through that and cutting some of the expenses out. So for us, I mean, we're expecting like a slowdown for next 3 months of this quarter and expecting things to start turning around like August, September timeframe. So for us, it's about just making sure we're ready for that turnaround when that happens.
sure. I think also is, look, what's also just by the stay in place orders that most of the states are having now. Um, most people's meals and entertainment and travel has all been cut to nothing. So that will
Right,
help indeed. Um, Also remember that if you're working from home, you have the ability from a tax perspective to utilize your home or business as a primary business
okay,
location. So that will help as well.
right,
Um, and also be careful not to cut all of your marketing, because a lot of your marketing specifically is a precursor to getting revenue. So you
right,
want to take a look at what's driving revenue from your expense
right,
side, like marketing,
right,
and just to make sure that you're not cutting everything that's going to really cut your revenue,
right.
because you want your revenue to continue to come in as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a good point. And then I know you mentioned a little bit about like making contingency plan. Like what sort of things are you seeing some investors and some other businesses to just have a contingency plan, like saving money up and like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, here's another kind of nice stopgap. If you own your own home, one of the things that you can do is you can take a look at the equity that you have in your home. And if one of the things that banks are doing, at least your personal bank, is you can apply for a home equity line of credit as a stopgap. So, for example, I have a home, and quite a while ago, just for investment purposes, I wanted to get a home equity line of credit. So I was able to get a $500,000 line based on the equity that I have in my home. And with the drops in interest rates, those rates are so low that you only have to pay back interest only.
Right,
So you may be able to take out, $50, $100,000 if indeed you needed it against the equity in your home. And once
right,
things, and just keep it as extra cash flow, if indeed you need it, and just tap the equity in your home as well, because it's deductible for tax
right,
purposes, but you also only have to pay interest back. So
right,
most of like mine is about 5%. So if I borrowed, let's just say, 100,000, what I'm looking at is $5,000 in interest per year.
right,
Divide that by 12, right?
right,
And I'm really looking at a small interest payment,
right,
so that I can have access to more cash if need
right.
be.
And I know you, in the call that we did last week, you made a really good point. So if you have a line of credit, let's say with Chase, then you want to draw on it and put the money in a different account. You don't want to put it in
Correct.
Chase, right?
Yeah, you want to put it with a different bank, because they also have the ability that just in case, you have any bank covenants or anything that occurred where you need to make a bank payment, the bank has the ability to pull that directly from whatever your cash reserves are.
Right,
So yeah, you would want to put it in a different bank, because that would,
right,
for example, if you got a home equity line of credit, you're able to pull that cash out, put it into another bank. So the bank that you borrowed from doesn't have the ability to pull it from your primary bank.
right. Yeah, no, that was a very good point. So I appreciate that sharing. Um, and then, and what about like in terms of forecasting? Like, what's the best way to forecast? I mean, like, I think the biggest challenge right now is for people to forecast their revenue. Do you have any thoughts on like how to forecast that and like how long of a forecast they should have? If they should review it on a weekly, monthly basis, or on a daily basis, with how things are changing?
Yeah, I would say at a minimum weekly now, because you may
Right.
want to, if you're looking at it weekly, you kind of have the idea, usually sometime during the month, really early in the month. It depends upon, again, what type of business you're in, but you can pretty much tell what your monthly collections are going to be, usually by, at least I know by the 10th of the month, what
Right.
my month is looking like. And if indeed I see a decrease, then what I would do is reduce your revenue, and you see what your expenses are for the month, and it gives you the ability to take the next 20 days of the month, for example, to even reduce your expenses further, if that's
Right.
what you need to do. But what I would tell you is look at it weekly, revisit it, create something now that takes you through the end of 2020 is what I would do, and do it
Right.
on a monthly basis so that you can actually take a look at that monthly. And then it gives you the ability to make changes on the fly
Right.
based
So
upon
have
things that you're seeing.
so have like your expenses saved up or enough funds saved up to take you through end of 2020 to like keep you
I would.
operational.
And take a look at, probably I would do the worst case scenario, because if things start to improve, that's great. You've already taken the measures to increase your cash flow based on
Right.
a difficult situation. And if things improve, you'll just have more cash and you'll be back in, you'll be back in business much faster and be able
Right.
to work on things faster. And one of the things that people have asked me during during situations like this, it's usually a really good thing, because when people are making a lot of money, they let a lot of money slip through the cracks. They don't look at things as closely as they
Right.
would otherwise. So
Right.
they'll take a look at things and they'll cut things that, the extra gym membership, this,
Right.
a lot of different types of things. And I think people are going to get a lot smarter with how they look at things going forward. I think
Right.
there's a great opportunity for folks to get even more profitable than they ever have been before,
Right.
because they're going to be, they're going to look at this a lot closer than they ever have, which is really a good thing. Um, you
No, I
know,
agree. I think that's the key, is just to use this opportunity rather than like, trying to worry about surviving. I think use that opportunities to figure out how you can thrive, when the economy turns around, because it is temporary. I think it's
it
not
is
going to be
temporary.
prolonged. Yeah, it's not going to be prolonged.
That's the thing that people have to understand, it is, don't give in to panic. Okay.
Right.
Because usually when you're panicking, you're not making the best decisions for your business. And people have asked me, well, before this even happened, people asked me, they said, what's a good rule of thumb for me to keep cash in my business, that if everything stopped, how much cash should I have in my business? And you take a look at your operating expenses. And what I say is have 6 months worth of operating cash in your company. Because if you know that you've got 6 months worth of cash, you're going to make much better decisions than you would if you only had 1 or 2 months worth of operating
Right.
cash. Because then you're going to panic and you're going to worry that it's all going to go away, and you may not make the best decisions for the long haul if you don't have enough cash to pivot
Right.
and make those decisions. That you've got a better opportunity to think about what you want to do, because you're not going to run out of money in the next month or so. You've got 6 months to make decisions and do the
Yeah,
right things
and
by and by
I
your
think
team.
that's a excellent point, because like being in real estate industry, like it's very, it's like the whole the critical piece is like managing your cash flow, like from closing to closing. And I'm a super conservative guy, just like personal finance has been like huge for me. So I've always like set some money aside. And I talked to my lender that I have a line of credit with last week. I said, look, I'm fine. Like the loans that I have, we're gonna pay on those, no issue with the interest or anything. But I just want to make sure that these funds are going to be available, when the market does turn around. I'm not using any of the money to, buy a new car or do anything stupid. Like I'm being diligent with my money, and then like it's a good opportunity to like, build those relationships also. Like especially if you have, a private money that you have borrowed, and then just reaching out to your private money lender and saying, look, we're doing okay, or if you need some time, just at least communicating goes a long way in building those relationships, when
That's
they're ready to
exactly
lend
right.
again. Yeah.
That brings up a good point. There's folks that you can reach out to. Like, so if you owe money, the banks now are probably more willing. They're not going to forgive your loan.
Right.
They'll just, for whatever's unpaid, they will they will charge interest, but the interest rates on the variable side are much less and they're going down. So if you have to forego, for example, rent payments or mortgage payments or anything like that, just talk to your lender and just tell them, look, this is what I can afford to pay you right now.
Right.
And most people are going to be, so long as you're communicating with them instead of hiding from them, they're going to be very receptive to things that need to be done. Also, call everyone and say, look, we're all going through the same thing here. So call folks and just let them know what you can afford to pay them right now. And just say, once things improve, we'll catch up, but right now we need to all conserve cash.
Yeah, and some of the large banks, what they've done is like they've automated some of the process. Like I know on the personal side, a friend of mine said he has a large mortgage with Chase, and he said like when you call in Chase, they have an automated system where you just call in, type in your social security number, and it just gives you 3 months forbearance to pay your mortgage payment. So, and it doesn't go on your credit. From what I understand, it doesn't go on your credit. Nothing affect. It just gets added to the end of your loans. Instead of 30-year loan, it becomes 30-year and 3-month loans that you don't have to pay for 3 months.
Yeah, but remember is the interest will continue to tack on.
Right.
It's not like, there's no additional interest. They will charge you the interest on whatever's not paid on that principal balance. So that will be right. But, at least from a cash perspective, it will help in the interim from a cash perspective so that you can put food on the table.
So I had a question from William, right? He said, I'm in the middle of buying a business and applying for funding with SBA 7A program.
7A.
I'm also a landlord and interested in using SBA disaster relief program. Do you think the SBA would adversely look at me applying for the disaster relief, considering I need to continue strong to qualify for SBA 7 loan for the new business acquisition? Or is each program is separate and independent of each other?
Each program is going to be separate and independent of one another. Again, I would try all resources and figure out what you can, try all resources in terms of your borrowing capability and see what comes back. You may be pleasantly surprised in terms of, like, I don't know. I haven't seen anybody yet who's gotten approved because I think everyone's in the process of just putting in their applications. I think the government's going to get flooded, but think about the activity. I think they're going to be more apt to approve without doing a totally thorough review, just to make sure that people are continuing to operate. So I think that, like I said, under normal circumstances, all of these loans would be underwritten. They would take a lot more time. But I think provided you get the application in and everything checks the boxes, they're going to approve stuff fairly quickly so that the economy can continue to go. I mean, the bottom line is if people have cash, they're going to spend, and keeping the wheel going in terms of consumer spending is what this is about, because that makes the economy go. And if people stop spending and people don't have cash in their hands, and the whole economy stops, and I don't think anybody wants that.
Right. No, absolutely. And Bruce had a question: should having 6 months of reserves during any market condition be more ideal? I personally, set aside like few months of reserve, whether good market, bad market. But what are your thoughts on that?
Always.
Right.
Actually, I say 6 months is a minimum. I try to keep 12 months around because you just never know. I mean, the things that have affected everybody where we don't have a chance to plan are always the worst. So nobody saw, 9/11 coming. What happened to everybody? Okay. Nobody saw the market crash in 2008 coming. We were rolling along, and all of a sudden it seemed like everything just, we watched Lehman go under, we watched Bear Stearns go over, and then everybody started to panic and was reeling. Most of this stuff that happens is unexpected. So at the end of the day, who would have expected that a pandemic that actually started in China would take down the entire global economy? There's no way 30 days ago that I would have predicted this.
Yeah, it's funny. Like so the conversations
you need to be always prepared so that you can sleep at night,
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I do same on my personal side. Like I kind of, as I saw more of this coming, I put money aside for at least 1 year worth of expenses. I mean, obviously expenses are going to go down. Like some of the stuff that you would have bought in a normal economy, like you're not going to buy that anymore. Some of your costs are going to go down, so you can stretch that money for longer. You're not like going out watching movies or like doing any of that. So yeah, I 100% agree with that. And then, so Lavita Thomas, she's my acquisition manager. She had a question: would you have to show where the money goes once you get it? She
You have to
said,
what? I'm sorry.
would
Say that
you
again.
have to? So once, let's say you do qualify for the payment, the paycheck protection program, and you get that money, would you have to show where the money goes? So she is the real estate agent, and she works for me as an acquisition person. So just to put that in preference. So would she have to show where the money went if she applies for the? Because what's going to happen with a lot of real estate agents is their income is going to drop because less people out there buying houses. So if she does apply, she gets approved. Like, how is an independent contractor to use the money?
Well, put it this way, I don't know if I would use it to go out and buy a new car, because I don't think that'll be well received, but provided that, your business, you can show it being utilized for your business. I don't know what the government is going to ask in terms of
Right.
how that money has been spent.
Right.
But I think primarily it's to all keep us afloat and to keep us going while this pandemic is going on. And, my guess is the government wants you out there and they want you spending,
Right.
but they want you to take care of the employees. And they want your businesses to continue to thrive, and et cetera. So, as much as I could, utilize it for business purposes and not for personal purposes.
Right. No, I agree. And then one other question. I have an LLC for tax purposes, but I would like to obtain rental properties. So, I mean, I guess, like if you buy properties now, those will not apply for the disaster relief program, right? It would be like you would have had to have them before or as of February 15th. Is that correct?
Well, remember, it can't be passive income based. I mean, you're talking about utilization of the funds. My guess is you'd be able to utilize those funds if you want to buy homes. That's indeed true.
Right.
But in terms of eligibility, I'm not sure that you can utilize and say, look, I want to buy houses for the future and
Right.
utilize the funds for that purpose. I don't think it would be approved for that.
Right. And then I was reading a news that the government is thinking about some like infrastructure programs to create jobs. So it's going to be pretty interesting, how government handles, because everything is moving so fast, and it's like every day there's a lot happening, and it's like almost impossible to keep up with everything, with all the changing laws and new like programs and stuff coming out. So what are some of your suggestions and ideas on like how to kind of stay on top of all these different moving variables? Just like
your bankers, your lawyers, your accountants, everyone, all of us are going to we're all looking to help our clients in every way possible, so that we're probably closest to it. It's so funny. You ask yourself, when did the cards, the house of cards start falling? And I think, Sharad, you're a sports fan as well as I am. But if you think about it, it was only 3 weeks ago, literally 3 weeks ago yesterday, I was talking about this with a friend of mine, when you recall that NBA player, Rudy Gobert, was diagnosed with being coronavirus. He was tested positive. And then the NBA completely shut down their operations the next day, and everything else followed thereafter. And if you were to take a look at the timeline in terms of stuff shutting down, almost take a look at your professional sports leagues, because once they start to approve people gathering in one place together and they start making plans to actually come back and actually start entertaining people again, that's a pretty good litmus test that actually says that the government feels that things have plateaued and they're going to start going back to normal. Like, that's what believe it or not, that's what I'm watching. I'm watching the NFL, I'm watching the NBA,
Right.
I'm watching the NHL to see when those folks are going to potentially start going back to work, or if they
Right.
continue to defer the time to come back, that tells you things aren't ready yet, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I follow, I'm a huge tennis fan. So I found out like yesterday before like Wimbledon got canceled. And like obviously like Olympics have been pushed to next year now. They're going to happen in 2021.
The
So,
Olympics, obviously. But I
right,
think if you take a look at, for example, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, and actually the NFL, when they're talking about starting training camps again, and they're actually planning for it and they set a date, people are going to start to feel better.
right,
That is
absolutely.
those, because those folks have access to the best and brightest with the CDC. So they're
Right,
trying to figure out when they can bring people together
right,
in large groups. And
right,
once they do that, you're going to watch everything follow: restaurants, bars, all that kind of stuff.
right.
They're going to start opening again. But watch the news in terms of your professional sports leagues when they start making plans and put dates on things to actually start congregating people together again, because then you know things are turning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like, I do, hold on. Yeah, Lorita said they better not cancel NFL. This is the year for the Bears. I mean, it's like I think every year is the year for the Bears. So, but nothing ever happens with them. Uh, no, I mean, no, that's a very very valid point. And like one thing, I personally I believe like the whole economy is driven based on confidence of the people. Like things could be really good, but if people don't feel good, economy is going to come to a stall. But if the things are not so good, but people feel confident, they are going to go out, start spending money, and that's going to get the economy going. So for me, I know like one big thing is like I have a 3-year-old and my wife is pregnant. So we're expecting another one in July. So for us, the big thing is when is our son going to go back to daycare? Because I mean, if kids aren't going to school, then parents can't really go to work. I mean, that's another thing you have to keep in mind. And I heard like in Phoenix, Arizona, there was some talk about like schools opening in a couple of weeks.
No,
No,
everything's been
no.
closed for the entire year now.
Wow,
So,
entire year?
so for the rest of the school year, everything's been closed. But if you think about it, what's funny is that look at like I keep telling people, it's weird. Look at the sports leagues, because once they decide they're going to start congregating
Yeah,
people together, everything else will follow. Trust me,
right,
because that was the thing. The NBA started everything. They started
right.
everything shutting down
Yeah.
after that.
It's
You know,
amazing to think like it's only been 3 weeks, like, but so much has happened in those 3 weeks, and like, wow, it's only been 3 weeks, and how things have moved so fast.
we've all
So
gotten
quick,
10 years older in the last 3 weeks. At least I feel that way.
right? I mean, I finally like I didn't shave, I trimmed my beard like after like 2 weeks. Yeah, like I should do
Um,
that.
people are all also asking me, if I'm to invest or I'm to do this, that, or the other thing. What are some things that I feel bullish on, or when do I think things are going to start improving? I really believe that April, and May are going to be tough.
Yeah,
I think you're going to see things plateau in May. I do believe the government is doing the right thing by keeping us all apart
right,
uh, right now. Unfortunately, it should have happened earlier, but who knew? None of this is unprecedented. None of us have ever seen anything like this before, and so who could have predicted this? There's no way anybody of us could. But what I would tell you is I believe things will start plateauing in May. I
yeah,
think you're going to start to see a small bit of recovery coming in June. And I
right,
believe July, August, so the third quarter, July, August, and September, I think you're going to see more normalcy. I think with heat also,
right,
the virus will not be as viable because
right,
heat kills viruses.
right,
I think we could see a second wave of this in the
right.
fall and into the early winter, but I think we'll all know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
I mean, the process is not going to stop, but I think you're going to see improvement beginning in July and August and September.
And like getting vaccination would be the key also, like once there's a vaccination for it. And then I think testing is already getting much faster. I was reading like Abbott
Yep.
Labs, I used to work for them. So they've come out with a test where, if you're positive or negative, you get results in 5 minutes, but, or if you're not positive, I guess you get it in 30 minutes. So I mean, I'm sure like things are gonna start improving, but it's like next couple of months is okay. How do you prepare for what you're going through, and how do you come out of it much stronger? I think that's the important part. It's not about just surviving; it's about thriving and coming out much stronger, because a lot of people are going to be hurting. I'm not just talking about like general population, but real estate investors or your competitors. But if you can be prepared to take advantage of that situation where other people didn't prepare as well, you'll have a huge leg up over your competition. So, yeah.
These situations, while you're going through them, like any difficult life-changing experience, while you're going through them, you just want them to end. You just want to get to the end and see
Right.
things start to improve. But typically positive things come out of these
I
types
agree.
of things because people are very innovative and they're
Yep.
creative and they figure out ways so that we can connect. Can you imagine this happening literally 10 to 15 years ago when we didn't have Zoom or we didn't have any of this
Yeah.
stuff, and how we would
Yeah.
have stayed connected?
I agree.
Things would have been 10 times worse than they are now. People didn't work remotely like they do now.
Right.
I
Right.
think what you're going to find is what I'd be really worried about is if you're in the commercial real estate space, I'd be concerned.
I agree. I agree. I 100%. I think a lot of people are going to realize after end of the 3 months that a lot of people they had on their payroll that were like now could work virtually. They're going to realize, I can operate long term or forever without having these people be in my office to save a lot of money on your payroll, or like maybe you don't need as many people as you thought you did, and then you don't need like all the office space. So I do agree. Like I think the commercial real estate is going to get hit pretty bad.
Yeah, I think you're going to see, like Regis, for example, where
Right.
you've got, um, space that people may need for, for meeting space, and they may need 3 or 4 desks as opposed to 30, and people
Right.
come in when they need to come in.
Right.
I mean, I think that you're going to look. People need to congregate. We need one another
Yeah.
physically, as opposed to just being isolated
Yeah.
like this. So I think that's never going to stop. But I don't think you're going to see, unless you're working in large, call centers, for example. I think you're going to see a lot of call centers. You're not going to see large call centers anymore. People are going to figure out how to do all this stuff remotely
Exactly.
from their home.
Right. Yeah.
I think residential real estate is going to do really well coming out of this.
Right.
Because I think, you've got real estate agents and you've got home builders that are having people look at things via video, and they're able to take virtual tours and all that kind of stuff. That's going to continue to get stronger and stronger.
Right. Yep.
From a technological point of view, it's going to be great. I actually do a lot of work in healthcare too. And folks are doing more and more telemedicine visits as opposed to direct office visits.
Right. Right.
I think you're going to see more and more of that get more and more popular. The government is actually encouraging that, so people don't congregate and do that type of stuff. I think you're going to see a lot more out call as it relates to medical services, where people are going to start to come to your home,
right.
As opposed to coming into a hospital. They'll bring equipment with them, they'll provide it to you, and then you bring it back when you're done.
Right. No, absolutely. And you're 100% right. Like when we're going through something like this, like it's hard to kind of step away from it and look at the positive that could come from it. But I do believe there's going to be lots and lots of positive that are going to come out of it. Just like simply in terms of being efficient with your business, with your personal expenses, and so many other things.
Technology, I would say technology, healthcare, residential real estate, the Amazons of the world are going to continue to get stronger and stronger and stronger.
Absolutely, 100%. And just last question I have for you, and I'll see if anybody else has any questions. Like on the personal side, what are some of like best practices? Like again, just looking at your personal expenses, going through every expense line item, see what you need, what you don't need, cut back on some subscriptions or whatnot that you may not need. Anything else that people could be doing to just be more efficient with their expenses?
Yeah, I can tell you things that I'm kind of looking at myself. Some of the things is like if you've got cable television, you know what I mean? I've actually called them, and typically what I'll do is I will negotiate and figure out what I can reduce
Right.
things to, take advantage of that type of stuff, reduce those types of expenses. Your meals and entertainment are going to go down naturally. Call your, if you're renting, call your landlord and see if you can, get a rental reduction, because the last thing they want is they don't want you to leave. You're actually in a much better position than you think you are, because they've got to pay a mortgage. So you may be able to negotiate with them in terms of reducing rent.
Right.
Utilities are what they are. But you may be able to defer lots of payments and just take a look at what your personal expenses are, and just start making phone calls and figure out what you can do. You'll be really surprised. You may be able to save hundreds and hundreds of dollars on your expenditures just by making phone calls.
And one question I had was about, like, going back to the stimulus package where people are receiving $1,200 per individual. Are people to use that money, like they could use that money for anything, right?
Anything they please. Yep.
Okay. So if they don't please to pay their rent, they could just go out, buy Xboxes and PlayStations, right? But I mean, another challenge
if you want to, because we're all stuck at home.
right.
We all need to be entertained at home.
Right. I'm just thinking it from my tenant's point of view, who are going to have to pay rent, and they're getting this money, sometime next 2 to 3 weeks. It's like, how do you get the message to these people, to your tenants and the people who are receiving this check? Hey, make sure you use this money to pay rent. Make sure rent is still something that you have to pay, rather than going out and spending this money on something that you don't really need, that you should be spending the money on. I mean, some tenants are going to know that, we can't file eviction right now, at least for next month to 2 months.
Right.
Some people are going to take advantage of it. That's unfortunate, but I was just wondering if there was any way that you can.
Well, I'm in the process of unfortunately, I'm in the process of getting divorced, and I am living in corporate housing right now that's fully furnished and stuff like that in Arizona. And I actually went to my landlord and my rent right now. Now, obviously, we're in high season, but they were really concerned about me leaving and having a glut of inventory on the market.
Right.
So my rent was $2,250 a month for my apartment that I'm sitting in now, and I was able to reduce that to $1,400 for the rest of the year.
Wow.
There's a lot of leverage.
Wow.
For the rest of the year.
Wow. Interesting.
Because people are concerned. They want they want the certainty of the cash flow coming in, and so they're willing to do deals that they may never have done before. The other thing too, Sharad, I would suggest is, if you know that you're going to get a refund on your tax returns, file as soon as possible.
Right.
That's what I would tell you, because if you're going to get a refund, file now. Don't wait until July 15th, where the government has provided you that leeway to file then. If you're going to owe money, take as long as you need to take to file, because the last thing you want to do is file and have to pay the government. But if you feel like you're going to get a refund, file immediately so you can get that money back as quickly as possible.
Yeah. No, I owe money every year, so I'm just going to wait until the last second to pay.
That's what I would do.
Yeah. No, I mean, for me, like, I think one of the most important things right now is manage your cash flow. Just manage your cash flow and then be prepared for the turnaround.
Yep.
Awesome, Larry. Let me see if anybody has any questions. Let me check on Facebook Live also. Oh yeah, so we have a couple of questions on Facebook, like, so all is non-recourse provided you keep them on, and they assume that 75% of the cost needs to go to payroll. So this was for the payment protection program. My bank sent me a list of them. I'll forward you. So he's going to forward. Yeah. So Anthony, thank you. That's really amazing. Yeah. So yeah, I believe it's like, again, like 75% of the funds have to be used for payroll, and then that loan is non-recourse. So I'm not sure if there's a limit to how much it's non-recourse or all of it is. But I would say, like, apply for the maximum you can, and whatever you get approved for, you get approved for. There's no, like, the worst that's going to happen is, like, somebody says, no, it's like the same thing as making an offer on a house. Like, unless you make an offer, you'll never know whether, your offer gets accepted or not. Yeah. Cool.
That's right.
Awesome, Larry. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And what I'm going to do is, if you don't mind, I'm going to share your information with our users. So if they have any questions, or if they need your help with something,
sure.
That they can
happy to help. Look, at this point in time, we all need to help each other. we're all in this together. And so
Right.
long as we can not just help one another on the healthcare side, if we
Right.
can help each other financially, people remember that stuff. And,
Absolutely.
we're all here to
Absolutely.
help one another to figure this out together. So.
Yeah, and especially given this time when people know you were there for them during the difficult times, they're going to
Yep.
remember for the rest of their lives. So
Absolutely right. Happy to help in any way I can. And Sharad, thanks for having me on. I
thank you,
appreciate it.
Larry. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.